I think this is some disadvantages when speaker represent hosted countries. As usual, a lot of business, a lot of things, and it's difficult broke out this daily routine. But I hope we will have Sergiy and our speakers from Moldova and Georgia. These countries, as you know, has a very good record of success story in visa liberalization sphere. And I think this is a simple and fact that visa-free regime for Moldova, Georgia and Ukraine was a really great achievement, not only for citizens of our countries who can travel much easier to the EU, but also for Eastern Europe, for Eastern... Sergiy, please join us. We welcome you. And for Eastern Partnership countries as a whole, because this decision of the European Union has broken some taboo about visa-free travel with Eastern European countries in general. I think you agree with me when I say that, for example, 10 years ago, only a few people in the EU thought that it could be possible. Also, the success story of visa-free is important for the EU as well, because this is a confirmation of effectiveness, its policy more for more, or freedom of movement in exchange of reforms. And the visa-free arrangements allows in EU much higher level of contacts, people-to-people contacts between the EU and a partner country. And it is also a factor of psychological importance for citizens of partner country, because they can say we are welcome in Europe, or at least we are not rejected by Europe. And the mobility and ease of travel is one of the most effective tools to give citizens a tangible benefit of European integration in very short term. At the same time, the visa-free regime should be treated like a starting point, like the first step for European integration, not as an end result of this. Also, it should be stressed that there was another practical benefit of visa liberalization process. I mean the reforms with a big transformation potential. And this transformation potential mainly reflected in the justice, security, and freedom sphere, because as the one of result of this, 3 EAP countries reached the European standards in some extent, but there is still a necessity to continue these reforms, mainly in the sphere of migration and border management, fighting corruption, countering discrimination, etc. And since the process of visa liberalization was accomplished, and we need to fix this progress, and moreover to strengthen the effort to push the reforms process further. That is why today I think we have a necessity to talk about the next steps of our countries. In this regard, I'd like to ask our prominent speakers to think about what could be a logical extension of the idea of abolition visa barriers with the EU, which for my opinion, for the first time, united the majority of politicians and civil society in our countries. And moreover, could we identify or could we find any other similar instruments in the European integration policies that will have the same positive potential or impact to obtain short-term benefits? As I can see, the success of visa liberalization action plan implementations was done, first of all, due to the clear planning structure and clear benchmarks. And the methodology of visa liberalization action plan implementation criteria envisaged measurable criteria with defined expected results and very clear understanding of benefits, practical benefits for all targeted groups, for civil society, for politicians, for decision makers, etc. That is why I'd like to ask our speakers, what do you think if such approach should be applied to the tasks provided by justice, freedom and security provisions within association agreements? Because as we know, Chapter 3 of Association Agreement contains a lot of tasks, and this is a big and comprehensive list of tasks. But let's be honest. If a list of formal and bureaucratic paragraphs really become as popular carrot and pusher of changes as the visa waiver was, probably we should look at these criteria again and try to adapt them to the new tasks, to the new challenges that our country faced. And how we should create the support of civil society of the reform envisaged by association agreements. Also, this is a list of big of questions that I mentioned now. I think now the time to move on our speakers. And I'm delighted to introduce the first speaker, Sergiy PETUKHOV, who joined us. Thank you, Sergiy, for this. And I'd like to ask you about updated plan on justice, freedom and security, because I know you and your team prepared this plan recently. And I think we would like to hear briefly about content and strategic aim of this updated plan and of course all mentioned issues related to our meeting. Please, Sergiy.
Thank you. I will start by going back to your remark that is there something as enticing and as specific as the visa-free regime that is in front of us? Why? No? Okay. This one's not working, actually. I think that was working. This one's not working. That's working for a camera, but not working for the audience. Okay? Yeah, whatever. It's important to remember that the visa-free has the past, the monitoring system, so it still remains kind of a carrot and more of a stick now, because there's a chance that you can lose the visa-free regime if you don't fulfill the criteria that was in the plan. And in Ukrainian case, that was quite a big plan. So apart from the general migration risks that are based on the factual situation, the plan has many things that we are implementing continuously. So that the visa-free still remains quite a factor in a domestic policy because of the post-monitoring. But apart from that, Ukraine has identified the justice and security as one of the priority areas in integration with the EU, along with the digital union and energy issues cooperation, which is, I guess, explained by the fact that security is in everybody's interest, right? So everybody wants more cooperation in justice and security. You want to have better understanding with your border countries. You want to be able to cooperate to fight organized crime. You want to be able to deal with the migrant flows, etc., etc. So that's where it's usually everybody wants more. What it means on our side, I mean, we've done a lot, and justice and security was the primary area for visa liberalization, so a lot has been done. So the new agenda that we are proposing to the EU that has been presented and hopefully will be presented at a political level in the Association Council is the cooperation in the specific areas. First is the integrated border management, something that we're still working on. We want our borders to be, transparent, the management of borders to be transparent and efficient. We don't want to see lines there. We want the business flow, to go smoothly and people crossing smoothly, but at the same time being able to stop illegal migrants and smuggling. We want to propose a closer cooperation in the area of migration, and Ukraine has been a reliable partner for the EU. We've been able to control the migration flows, although Europe is now seeing this migration crisis still kind of, subsiding, but still ongoing. The Ukrainian border has never been a part of the established routes, and I think we've been effective in stopping illegal migration. We also value the cooperation with the EU in reform of our justice sector and law enforcement agencies, something that is important domestically and where a lot of work can be done. So we have EU advisory mission working with our police, prosecutors, and other law enforcement agents, and helping Ukraine in its domestic reform agenda. Also, we have the cooperation between our justice authorities. We want to be seen as equal to European countries. We want to be ranked along the same benchmarks in terms of the evaluation of the court system. And we want to be part of all the relevant agencies or cooperation networks that allow for the third party involvement or cooperation. So in a way, I think that although there is nothing big as visa liberalization hanging out in front of us in a short period of time, we do realize that it's a mutual interest to cooperate closer in the justice and security sector. And we do realize that whenever we get to the point of discussing the Ukrainian membership in the EU, and that's our goal, I'm sure that the justice and security is going to be the first area where we will have to show the significant progress. So in a way, what we're doing now is accelerating our integration in this area, which is inevitably one of the first things that EU will look into when discussing any formal, deeper cooperation with Ukraine. Questions of, democracy, human rights, cooperation on security questions, migration, organized crime. So I think that although there is nothing, that we can gain in a short term, this is our initiative that is also interest of the EU, and implementing our new agenda or getting closer ties and stronger cooperation in justice and security makes everyone more secure. serves, Ukrainian domestic reform agenda and brings us closer to our membership aspirations in the EU. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergey, for these essential comments. And now I'd like to ask you, Elena CECCEEVA, to give us brief pictures from your country, from Moldova, because as we know, Moldova was a front runner in this process, and obviously you have much more experience in this road, and we hope that you exactly know about new approaches, new instruments that will be useful after visa-free. Please, Elena.
So first of all, when talking about the visa-free regime, we need to mention our budget support programs that we have in Moldova. It was the first budget support for implementation of the action plan of a visa-free regime. It was 21 million worth. It was, there were three components: public order and security, integrated border management, and migration management. So in 3 years, we managed to fulfill all the benchmarks from that budget support. And after 1 year, we signed the financial agreement for the support of the police reform. It was even bigger. It is 56 million euro. It is for the implementation of our strategy for the police reform. So we will have in 2020 a modern, absolutely European and fully operational police force. So we can mention that since the visa-free regime, our trust in police increased. It was 23%, and now at this moment, current stage, it is 56%. Our trust in police, it is a very high rate for Moldova, very high. We have, if talking about border management, we will have a new integrated border management strategy according to the European standards, with a good cooperation with Frontex. We have a modern border. We have a common patrol with Ukraine. And in the next year, in the beginning of the year, we will have common patrol with Romania. So our migration, we don't have migration flows. We can mention that in the first report under the suspension of visa-free regime, visa mechanism of the European Commission, we didn't have any problems in the field of internal affairs. There just was mentioned money laundering and corruption in Moldova. There wasn't any objection to the internal affairs mechanism. We have also very good cooperation with Romania and also with Ukraine. We have our cross-border cooperation programs. We will implement SMURD 2 in Moldova. There are 3 big projects. They are worth 30 million euro. We have migration projects within the ICMPD, within Mobility Partnership, with IOM. We have plenty big projects with the European Union, and we feel their support for the Home Affairs field. So now we can say that we will have absolutely modern Ministry of Interior, that is in line with the best European practices. Our experts in the visa-free, we work also present our expertise to the Georgia within implementing the visa-free, and also to the Ukraine, as we have a very good cooperation with the Ministry of Interior of Ukraine for sure, with Georgia, and with other Eastern Partnership countries such as Armenia, Azerbaijan. So we have the absolutely sustain of the European Union, and not only of the other side. We have a very good progress in the field of internal affairs. We even now are up in the chief report of the United States regarding trafficking in human beings. In the last year, we completely eradicated the component of the pyramidal organized crime. It was like in the case of Georgia. This is in short lines what it's about in Moldova and the field of home affairs. We have very good statistics, yes, really now.
Thank you, Iryna. I think we will have some time to discuss not just the progress, not just advantages of this process, but also difficulties and problems, and probably we we will have opportunity to share our experience or problems that face our countries, similarities or differences, etc. But now I'd like to pass the floor to our Georgian colleague. And I know, Gagita, that you are very engaged into this process, and this year was a test year for Georgia and Ukraine, because it was a first anniversary, yes, of visa-free regime. And please, Gagita, share with us your expectations. What should do our countries, for example, next year? How we should do the stable that reform that was were envisaged, but action plan on visa liberalization, and how we can strengthen the cooperation between civil society and governmental bodies involved in this process.
Thanks a lot. Unlike other speakers, I'm representative of the non-governmental organization, so I think it's me who should be a devil's advocate on this panel. So I will try to very briefly introduce your Georgian experience on visa-free issues, and in order to answer your question. So it's already 1.5 years Georgia received visa-free regime with the European Union, and more than 400,000 visits were made from Georgian citizens to European Union and Schengen area. It is a quite huge increase if we compare it the previous statistical data. For example, in 2016 it was 90,000 short stay visas issued only, but after 1 year we addressed to our European partners that there has been some challenges in order to have some additional wave of the asylum seekers in some European countries. It should be mentioned that in 2017 it was almost 30% that Georgian asylum seekers went to European Union and asked the shelter. But I should have to mention also that government of Georgia has made very important and decisive steps in order to address these concerns, and I will just follow several of the most important things I think it was done by the government of Georgia. First of all, it was very important to address European Union countries to add Georgia in safe country list, because this reduced the time to discuss the application, and very short period of time give us an opportunity to reduce the asylum seekers in EU countries. For example, in 2018 already in Germany we have 70% decrease of the asylum seekers, and in totally we have 30% of decrease of asylum seekers in whole Europe. So very important also was the complex information campaign which was conducted all over the Georgia, and it must be mentioned that there was very unique cooperation with civil society organizations and government officials when, for example, hundreds of meetings were conducted in the regions, and in every meeting there has been one state official, decision maker, and one expert from civil society, and it was on a voluntary basis, no one was paying for it, and hundreds of meetings were conducted all over the Georgia, and another wave of these information campaigns will be conducted in October, when we will have our targeted meetings in the regions from where we had some challenges about the violation of the visa-free rules. It was also very important to send the police attaches in EU member states, and we developed bilateral cooperations to fight against organized crime in 17 EU member states, and with 10 states we already have agreed text of the memorandum, and it was very helpful to cooperate to fight against organized crime. And at the same time, we developed a model to have some exit interview for Georgian citizens, and they should have some basic documents, for example, tickets, insurance, accommodation, and venue where they are going, and so on, these basic details. It must be also mentioned that Georgia is developing a complex migration strategy. We have 2016-2020 state migration strategy, and it was elaborated with high engagement of the civil society organizations, and this commission is developing intergovernmental analytical system, and from every ministry we will receive the important statistical information, and based on that we will receive the evidence-based policy making process that gives us an opportunity to make better risk assessment and conduct better migration management in terms of the complex analysis what we will have from the different ministries. It was also very important in cooperation and readmission issues, because Georgia has developed a very unique system of readmission. It is the only country who has an electronic system of readmission, and from the beginning of the uploading some documents to request the readmission system, continuation of the details of the transportation details of the person who must be readmitted. Georgia has accepted 98% positive answers on the demand of EU countries, and only 2% was rejected in terms of the readmission, when it was impossible to detect this person was Georgian or not at all. But also it must be mentioned that the attractiveness of Georgia is rising, and during last year we have a dynamic that from other countries we also have illegal migrants, and we should have to think about it as well and conduct all the time as live monitoring and evaluation, because it is a live process and we need to follow it. Georgia has an open border policy, and many countries can very easily enter to Georgia, and I fully support this policy, but we also need to find the right balance, because the dynamic is also changing, the attractiveness is rising, and we should have to follow this process and manage it accordingly. Border management still remains challenging for Georgia, because we know we have 4 neighbors, and from these 4, with 3 we don't have a demarcation and delimitation of the borders, and of course with Russia it will be almost impossible to have some agreements, at least nearest future. We have borders, delimitation only and demarcation with Turkey, and state commission has been created in order to work on these issues with Armenia and Azerbaijan, and we already have some progress on this field, and I think this issue will be very important as well. Fight against trafficking and corruption is also one of the topics of the association agreement and the point we are talking about. So Georgia is already on the first basket, and it is widely aware that Georgia implemented important reforms on this field and has shared best practice to fight against the organized crime and trafficking. That's why European Union don't have any challenges on this point of view from Georgia. Also, security is an important issue, and yesterday the United States Department report was published to fight against terrorism, and there also was highlighted that Georgia has enough capacity in order to detect and effectively react to such kind of risks. So at the same time, cooperation with CEPOL and Europol, we developed some memorandums with them, and also there has been several joint operations in different EU countries, and these operations were very successful, and important network of some organized crimes were destroyed. It must be also mentioned when we are talking about the further steps that it is very important to develop the circular migration opportunities for our citizens, because the main reason why, for example, Georgians are leaving our country and going to European Union, it is a social economical problems, and they try to find a job in European Union, and if we will support the legal migration, that will be one of the best way to solve existing problem. We already have some good practice with some European Union member states. For example, with Poland, after visa-free regime, more than 4,000 Georgians went in Poland, and they have legally engaged in and find their job during 6 months. They are staying there, working, and they get back to Georgia, and again after six months they can go again to Poland and continue their work. So this can be one of the best solution when we are talking to effectively manage migration flows. And Angela Merkel has been in Georgia 1 month ago, and she also announced that she will work on quotas for Georgia to have some working opportunities for Georgian citizens in Germany. And we already have good experience with Germans as well, because there has been a circular migration of the nurse, but it was very limited number of up to 100 nurses were working in Germany, and this was a very successful project as well. And I think it is the right dimension to work individually with other member states of the European Union in order to ensure sustainable development of the migration management. I would also like to highlight one issue which is common with Eastern Partnership countries who have signed the association agreement and received the visa liberalization. It is an anti-discrimination law, and in Georgia, government has allocated the additional human and financial resources to effectively implement it. But still, I think we need important amendments in order to support public defender's office to equip this office with needed instruments and needed tools to effectively monitor and implement the anti-discrimination law, because especially with LGBT community, there still are complex problems which is related to timely and adequate response to challenges they face during their lifetime. So IOM is an international organization of migration, is also very actively engaged in order to effectively manage migration in Georgia, and within the support of international organizations during the years, the integration programs were funded by them. But during last year's first time, Georgia started to allocate some budget money for reintegration programs, and we are giving special offer to our citizens who are coming in Georgia to receive some medical treatment, start working, give some support to start small and medium business, and give some shelter, and so on. And I think this is also very important. And I will be more ambitious to talk about the further steps of cooperation with the European Union, because Georgian experience shows that VLAP was a great case study in Georgian case. I mean, because from my point of view, the dynamic of implementation of reforms on the EU integration issues has never been so high than it was during the implementation of the VLAP. So if we will take in parallel with association agreement, other obligations as well, and if we will have very touchable outputs, I think it will work. And I mean the fourth freedom of the European Union, to have an opportunity to our citizens to work in European Union. We all know that this will not happen during next year, but if we will have the defined terms and conditions what we should have to fulfill, I think this will be an important step, because we all need to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And this worked in case of the VLAP in Georgia reality very well, and this was a great experience, I think. Because when we are asking our partners in European Union and talking about the further steps, they always try to mention that we should have to focus on the association agreement, and definitely we should have to really focus, and this is the main document that defines the agenda of cooperation with the European Union and Georgia and in Ukraine and Moldova as well. But at the same time, I think that in parallel with association agreement, we can do a great job, and we have very good examples of it, and I think we can have such kind of very bright achievements on the other fields as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gagita, for your contribution and very comprehensive overview of state of play in different area of reforms and state of play in visa liberalization in Georgia now. And I think the next questions will be connected to the suspension mechanism. You mentioned about this, but I'd like to consider this issue more precisely, because as you know, prior to granting visa-free travel, the EU put a suspension mechanism in place that would allow for visas to be reinstated under the certain circumstances. Yes, and member states can trigger the visa suspension mechanism when faced with some substantial increase, if I'm not mistaken, more than 50% in asylum application, or increase in irregular migration, or increase in number of refusing across borders, etc. Yes, and interesting that this test year passed for Ukraine and Georgia, as I mentioned. We observed that there was no some crucial violations of harsh security and migration rules of the suspension mechanism, and we received, I think, a positive assessment from the EU Commission of implementation of visa-free travel, but recent figures show an increase of irregular migration trends for nationals from EEP countries, and as we know, some EU member states stress that these negative trends connected to all three countries. And these serious concerns among the EU countries, I think we need to prepare some answer. We need to be prepared to address these concerns. And for example, in this context, partner countries have initiated process to strengthen their informational campaign and approach the Commission bilaterally for input and feedback. And probably you know that in early October, the EEP migration panel and asylum panel and integration border management panel will be held in Tbilisi, and the revision of information campaign connected to the visa-free travel will be the main focus on this panel discussion. So I'd like to ask our distinguished speakers to share with us what you think, what is can be new approaches should be applied or introduced in order to meet the criteria envisaged by suspension mechanism, just to save the visa-free regime and fully meet the criteria of suspension mechanism. Sergiy, please. Here.
Thank you. Well, from what I know from the statistics that has been published, Ukraine has not presented a substantial migration risk to the EU countries. We've been cooperating and effectively stopping the third country migration through the Ukrainian borders. And in terms of Ukrainian nationals, there was certain surge in the numbers of asylum seekers, especially in 2014, which in absolute numbers was not a big challenge for the EU, but these numbers went down in 2015 and 16. I haven't seen the number for 2017. As to the possible violations of the visa-free requirements, as of now, we have not seen many, a big number of cases. There are, of course, as always, there is situations of violations. We have, I think the latest number that was published is something like 1.5 million Ukrainians who use the visa-free regime to travel to the EU. So this is, of course, a big number. There will be a certain number of violations. It has not been significant for now, and there is a specific mechanism and agreements on readmission that they're supposed to deal with these situations, and we do have them. I think we're fulfilling our obligations. We are working to have more of these agreements with different countries, and again, for now, I think we're well set to react on any possible surge in illegal migration. For now, we've been enjoying a good cooperation with our EU colleagues and partners, and I don't really expect problems coming up because there is really no reasons for that. I mean, the effect of the war in Donbass has been felt in 2014 mostly. Now, although the situation is still problematic and ongoing, this has not created, significant problems for the EU because internally displaced persons can be fully integrated in the rest of the territory of Ukraine. There is no need to provide any specific protection for them in third countries because Ukraine has been, although it can be argued whether we've fulfilled our obligations to our own nationals to the fullest extent, but overall the country has been dealing successfully with the situation of the outflow of people from the occupied territories.
So first of all, we should have to, I think, detect what are the main reasons why our citizens are going to the European Union, and we shouldn't have to wait the annual reports of the European Commission because it is a live process, and we should have to monitor and evaluate this on a monthly basis, and bilateral cooperation with member states, because in Georgian case we don't have a challenge with all EU member states. There are defined countries where Georgian citizens are going to receive more social, economical benefits, and we already know where we can have some challenges. Iceland was a very strange case because there was not any rational arguments where Georgians can go there. There was some virus video on the internet who offered some different kind of benefits for Georgian citizens, and it happened just for one video. You can imagine that many people shared this video on social networks, and then part of the Georgians, and it was for the previous year it was 40 people who asked the asylum in Iceland, and for the next year it was 400. So can you imagine, the people from the Iceland were also shocked what has happened, and it was just for the one video which was put on the internet and shared. and that is also very strange, and that means that we all the time need to monitor and evaluate the current situation, what is happening, and react very timely, because it is not a problem you can solve during 1 or 2 days if you have some negative dynamic, because that's why we need a very tight cooperation with member states. And I think we are doing a great job, because with cooperation with European international institutions, with security issues, with fight against organized crime, fight against irregular migration, we have already developed very good practice, and I think there can be some issues that we could do proactively and not wait to have some challenges, because we have other countries' experience as well. I know very well Balkans experience. Yes, Western Balkans, that there has been, during 1 year, there has been some cases where 500 times raised the asylum seekers from some countries. So in Georgian case, it was 30%, but still, of course, we should have to react adequately on the demands of the European Union, especially when we all know that there are very populistic political forces who are trying to use this, and that's why European Union is very sensitive about these issues. So to fulfill the benchmarks of the suspension mechanism, and I think we all are currently more or less successful on this point of view. Bilateral cooperations and add our countries of safe country of origin list is the key issues that helps us to be effective, and we all have good practice to cooperate on readmission issues. So of course, no matter how much information campaign you will conduct, there still will be some people that will not obey the rules and violate visa-free terms and conditions. But I think we should have to elaborate the system, and we should have some systematic approach to manage existing risks. And currently, I think we don't have such kind of urgent issues to be in line to suspect suspension mechanism in case of our countries.
So when talking about this report, we can say that Moldova has some critical statistic regarding illegal migration, but moreover, in March, our Prime Minister approved the calendar. It's a small action plan regarding the... Our Prime Minister approved a calendar. It's a small action plan regarding the implementation of the recommendation of this report. And we have very good results till now. We practically implemented all the recommendations. We made 88 informational campaigns among our citizens and also at the borders regarding the illegal migration to Europe. And we can say that all our citizens now are very well informed. We have a very good cooperation with Europol, like it was mentioned in this report. We are a member of all analytical projects, the so-called focal points of the Europol. And now we are the first Eastern Partnership country that will launch SOCTA Moldova. It's an analytical report regarding serious and organized crime. And we are still a reliable counterpart for our European and international partners. Just to be mentioned that we have our representative of Moldova as a member of the executive committee in the Interpol, Mr. Fedolin Reker, who is a delegate for Europe, together with Catherine de Bol, the director of Europol. And in June, we were visited by the Director General of Interpol, and who mentioned that we, as a small country, we have a very good informational exchange with Interpol. Our numbers of informational exchange are higher than a big country. We are in the first 5 countries. So we are very reliable and very good partner for the whole international European community.
Okay, but what about the civil society? Just mentioned, you mentioned about cooperation with the international organization. What about civil society?
We also, our ministry.
Examples, yes?
We have plenty big number of signed cooperation agreements with NGOs and with civil society. Our police has, I think, more than 20 cooperation agreements with civil society. We have a new project with the civil society, the so-called, how we call them, good grannies. These are old people that help children to go to school and to cross the road. We have our Bureau for Migration and Asylum also have many cooperation agreements with the civil society and with NGOs they help for the reintegration of the migrants who are in Moldova, but we don't have such a plenty number of migrants. There are 134, and most of them are from Ukraine. So our NGOs help them to integrate in Moldova from the juridical side, from the psychological side, from medical. We help them to live here, to have a normal life.
Okay, yes, Elena, thank you, thank you. Okay, now I think enough time for comments, questions, and this is a session we start now. Because we leave, yes, I see, just 1 minute, we leave enough time for exchange the information with you. And we have now the first speaker, yes, please introduce yourself, yes, and ask the question, or please give the comments.
Good morning. My name is István Komorowski from Hungary. I'm representing European Economic and Social Committee. My first question goes to the Ukrainian Deputy Minister. You are certainly aware that there is a political discussion today in the European Union between member states about the migration, whether you should be accepting everybody as a migrant or just political asylum seekers or not. When it comes to the Ukrainian practice, would you describe your approach towards this question? Do you allow not Ukrainian but all other representatives who are coming as a migrant to Ukraine to proceed to other countries, or do you setting up camps? What is the political and practical approach towards this question? And the second goes to Georgia. I'm dealing with Georgian issue as well. To what extent third country people coming to Georgia as asylum seekers and trying to proceed to the member states? Thank you.
You can pick some collect or would you like to answer now? Yeah, okay.
I can answer that. So, look, I mean, technically speaking, there is no discussion in terms of who is the asylum seeker, who's a migrant, how you treat everyone. There's a legal standards to that. And this one works better, but if you want me to talk on this one, no, it doesn't matter. Okay. So, and the approach is regulated by the conventions on the refugees. I mean, Ukraine is following that. So there are people who are present in Ukraine based on legal grounds. Fine. There are people who have no legal grounds to be present in Ukraine. So these are illegal migrants. They are readmitted to the territory, the country of their origin, if the country is cooperating. Or else is if they are claiming the refugee status, they would follow the procedure for claiming the refugee status. What is discussion is ongoing in the EU member states is whether to include in the migrants quota the Ukrainian migrants, or so-called, right? So there is some of our neighboring countries that are claiming that they've taken millions of Ukrainian refugees, and therefore they should not really have to be included in the quotas, which is, of course, not a serious claim. This is a misstatement. I mean, there's a surge of Ukrainians who come to work in the EU, and that's the interest of the EU countries who have been seeing the surge in their economic development. They need more manpower. They need more people to work and fill the positions of the people who left to other countries, or just to satisfy their growing demands of their economy. So this discussion, I mean, in terms of who you count as migrants, I mean, this is clear. To me, this is just a political statement that has no basis in the actual sort of legal regulation for migrants. I mean, from what I know, this is not taken seriously. There is no serious discussions. There is a political claim that people who come to Europe to work, according to the domestic regulation, getting the work permits, paying taxes and social security, should be included in the whole sort of pool of migrants who are in the EU. And I think these are two very different categories. That is quite clear in terms of legal regulation and their economic situation. And the question of whether, how do you see the migrants is a purely political question raised by some of the political fractions.
In case of Georgia, during last 2 years, 50,000 living residence permit was issued by government of Georgia to the citizens of different countries. And top 3 countries who accepted the living permit, it is Turkey, it is China, it is India, and also there are some small countries as well, and the recent dynamic during last year, it shows that illegal migration is rising from those countries, but they are small countries, and it seems that there are some organized groups who are trying to lie some people in their countries that from Georgia they can organize to go for them to go in the European Union, and this is a cases of the somehow maybe very close with trafficking, because they are lying some groups and they're kind of taking them to the Georgia, and then of course there has been such kind of cases, but still mainly from Nigerian people or from we had some cases from Iraq that there are some groups who are organizing some travel tour for them, and the last station is Georgia, and it seems like that they are staying in Georgia and they are not going from Georgia to European Union, because we don't have a direct border to European Union, and visa-free works only in case you are you have Georgian passport and you are the Georgian citizen, so there is no other way to go with use visa-free and go in European Union. That's why we have such kind of cases, but it is not going to European Union. It is Georgian problem currently, and that's why I think that we should have to find the right balance when we have open door policy, but the dynamic shows that the attractiveness of Georgia is raising, and also some organized groups are trying to use it for their purpose.
Thank you. Probably we have another comments, questions. Okay, please. Okay.
Thank you. My question basically to all the 3 panelists about the expectations for kind of next, maybe not very huge things, but maybe some considerable, substantial things to expect from the European Union to be offered or to be jointly endeavored to come to in cooperation with the European Union on justice and freedom and security. I mean, visa-free liberalization is of course a big thing and a big achievement, and of course minimum minimorum is to achieve to maintain this achievement. But what next? Basically, what next to achieve to? What next to try to? I know that specifically in the Ukrainian case there is some thinking about it, and maybe Sergiy would be able to present some present state of thinking, so to say, which is in communication with the European Union. And what is also, is there discourse, is there discussion about it in Georgia and in Moldova? Maybe some, if you could share. Thank you.
Thank you, Dmitro, that you came back us to the first question of our session. Please.
So we've briefly discussed that, and I think that our thinking is in terms of, okay, so we've got this visa-free behind us. We're still following that action plan, post-monitoring, but we want more in a specific areas related to the technical cooperation between the specific bodies. The important part that I have not mentioned, something that is our interest and something that we want the EU to do more on, is the sanctions regime against Russia. And we're thankful for introduction of these sanctions, but we think that there's a need for a specific monitoring mechanism, because we do see the instances of the violation of the sanction regime. We do see the European politicians coming to Crimea illegally via Moscow making statements. We see that we see that European companies participate in the building of the Crimea bridge. We've seen Siemens, well, however you call it, but whether they are directly responsible for it or it's their mismanagement. But in the end, their produce has ended up in Crimea in direct violation of the sanction regime. So that's something that we think is an area where we really want to cooperate with the EU, and it's the EU interest, so that, you know, to make sure that the sanction regime that they are applying is effectively enforced. We also think that EU should have more of a permanent attention to the human rights violation in Crimea, maybe even look at the sanction introduced for the human rights violation, sort of what we call a sense of list, because for now there is no international presence in Crimea, and the only response that, you know, we see with respect to this ongoing violations is the statements by the High Representative Mogherini, which is very important, but we do think that more of a permanent attention would put more pressure on Russia. So this is another area where we are, what we think is part of our new agenda. And that's, of course, another sort of dimension to the question of security, not sort of just migration and border security, but also the external security of Europe as a whole.
On a technical point of view, Georgia tries to have to develop sustainable institutions, and that all that we have already created, we are effective, and to ensure that these institutions work accordingly. And Georgia tries to receive more financial resources in order to raise its effectiveness. And also I would say that we should have to be very principled in terms of the implementation of the anti-discrimination law, because there still are the challenges of the capacity, of the knowledge, and the enough resources as well. And from the point of view of the non-governmental organization and the experts, which I would wish to government of Georgia to work more opportunities for Georgian citizens to have an opportunity to work on EU market. So I think further steps when we are talking about more integration tools and instruments, that would be the best opportunity in Georgian case, because the challenges are mainly related to this point of view. And if there will be other opportunities to work on the circular migration, at least, or some quotas from the EU countries, that would be the best option in this case.
So I can speak just from the point of view of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and not from the whole country, as I represent the Ministry of Internal Affairs. In terms of this, we are looking forward to have also good cooperation with the European Union, to have new projects and technical assistance in the fields of interest for our ministries, like combating cybercrime, smuggling, migrants. These are our priorities.
Hello, my name is Mantas Ikumavičius. I'm from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania. I wish to maybe refer more to the topic of this discussion, the post-visa liberalization agenda, the more enhanced cooperation on the justice and home affairs issues among the Eastern Partnership countries, the associated Eastern Partnership countries and the EU. The visa liberalization as such, it served as a very powerful tool to reform and to conduct the reforms in your three countries, and you succeeded this. My question would be, do you see some other flagship projects or flagship initiatives or objectives that would be relevant for the three countries, so that you could jointly propose them to the EU, and that you would be ready to jointly actually implement them and to achieve them? Because the visa liberalization served as No, I mean, the EU membership is a political issue, but all efforts, they would contribute to this as well, and we definitely support you on this, and we support you on sanctions. And you mentioned both the EU level sanctions, but also national. And I can say from my country that we have our national sense of actually it is called it's sense of list, but it's related to some other cases as well. We also have Tatunashvili list in Lithuania, and we take this very seriously. But in terms of the enhanced cooperation on the GHA area, what would be, if there are some flagship areas where you could work together, as you did in the case of the visa liberalization, doing this bilaterally, but also coordinating very closely with each other, sharing experiences, helping each other, and finally achieving this. So, do you see some areas, and what could they be?
Look, I mean, we do have several things that we do together. We do have the Eastern Partnership. There is Agenda 2020, and it has sort of common goals listed there. It is clearly understood that Eastern Partnership has 6 countries, and each of them has a different approach to its relations with the EU. There are 3 more optimistic countries sitting at this table, and 3 other countries that have their own speed and ambition with the relation to the EU. So, and if you look at this agenda, it has a lot to do on justice and security, on anti-corruption. So, I mean, I think that we will follow this agenda. That, I guess, something that is common to all of us 3 countries in terms of fight against corruption, transparency, and bringing more democracy. Otherwise, I think, well, here I would say that, the association agenda is indeed a big agenda. There's a lot to be done in the justice and security. And although we want more in certain areas, we do realize that a lot remains to be done in something that is covered by the agreement itself. It's not that I can say that, look, we've exhausted all that we need to do in the association agreement. That's why, we want something more. I guess there's a understanding that there's a lot that has to be done to make this agreement functional on both sides, on Ukrainian side as well. And specific areas where we want to go further. So there's no, again, something big or something specific that we are aiming to, or we're doing this to get something. I don't think that there is anything. But I do believe that by fulfilling the agreement and accelerating in certain areas our cooperation, we will get, we'll be more ready when there will be an opportunity in the future to get closer with the EU, to get some further integration possibilities. And again, I mean, EU is ongoing its own processes, right? So I think that for now, EU is not really ready to offer something. They're redefining themselves. Somebody's leaving, somebody's joining. It's kind of a revolving door sort of situation. So I think, again, nothing really specific, nothing really big. There is understanding that we need to, a lot needs to be done on the association agreement. There are areas where we want more cooperation, and this is just the common benefit of Ukraine and EU. Nothing that we do together specific, specific objective.
In Georgian case, Georgia separately has already started to elaborate some roadmap for integration, and Georgia sees the next step implementation of this roadmap, and it is also on the agenda to continue to start the screening of the acquis and to receive the European Union support during this process. I think that this can be the same issue for all 3 countries, and I think we all should have interests about it. Also, we have in the agenda, it is a sectoral integration, different kind of fields of it is related to energy, environment, and so on. But on the hot topic to say, it is a roadmap on in order to become member of the European Union. So Georgia, it is a first draft, so that the document is not still public, and we don't have an action plan yet. But it is the way Georgia is thinking to develop the future cooperation with the European Union, and I think it will be very interesting for Moldova and Ukraine as well. And it will have multiple effects if we 3 of us will do the same issue, and if we will have more cooperation on this point of field.
Well, in case of Moldova, I also can talk only from the perspective of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. But we already have a very good cooperation. We have a common project for all Eastern Partnership country, the Eastern Partnership Police Cooperation Program. We shared our expertise and we continue to share our expertise and best practices in the field of internal affairs. And as I said, our representative share their expertise in visa implementation action plans with Georgia and with Ukraine also, because we were the first country who obtained visa-free and we have a little bit more experience, 3 years more.
Okay, thank you very much. And do we have a time for one question or one, two short questions or comments? Please, would you direct? Yeah, contribute.
May I talk? Yes. I'm Paul Kravchuk from Europe Without Barriers NGO. I'm working in the same organization with Ms. SUSHKO. And my question is, maybe it will repeat some of statements that were said here. Do I understand right that actually the only thing that can be next after visa liberalization and that can be popular and attractive is a Schengen perspective or membership perspective, and no other forms are available currently?
Well, that depends on what attracts you. I'm sure that what's attractive for my colleagues is to have a better cooperation within the specific frameworks, quicker exchange of information, ability to, something that I have not mentioned. For example, we've signed an agreement with the Eurojust, so we have a Ukrainian prosecutor sent to The Hague who would be able to communicate directly with the prosecutors from all the countries. That definitely facilitates the cooperation between the prosecutorial authorities and investigations that have international dimensions. So that's definitely something that is attractive to them. It's definitely not something that is at the level of the visa-free, something that everybody would understand and benefit from. So I guess, even the digital sort of cooperation has this one goal hanging. We're talking about canceling the roaming charges for the mobile phones, something again that everybody can enjoy and understand. So again, I don't think that there's going to be something really nice in the justice and security, but the way it works is when you are cooperating better, when you can deal with the organized crime, the long-term benefits are seen by the society, not necessarily though tied to the specific corporation. So I don't expect anything really huge or general to come out of this cooperation, but that will definitely contribute to the general increase in the security in Ukraine, in the respect for human rights, better protection of Ukrainians in Ukraine and in the EU. I think that the next thing that we would be talking about and dealing with is the question of the regulating the migration issues, the legal migration by Ukrainians, protection of their labor rights, protection from discrimination in the EU. And we've seen that happening in certain EU countries. Of course, when you have much more Ukrainians coming, there are different sentiments that are raised. So that's something again that we will do, but it's not. So my answer to your question is probably yes. There won't be anything as big as visa-free until we get the EU membership.
So Schengen area, the goal to be a part of the Schengen area is a very bright carrot to keep the satisfaction of not only the public servant but also general society, because it would be really very important. But at the same time, there are many parallel issues that we should have to focus. And I think association agreement and justice chapter includes many complex and very hard reforms we should have to focus on. And I think more financial support and bilateral cooperation with EU member states will be short-term priority in terms of EU integration issues, but still, of course, became a member of the Schengen area. It would be nice to start thinking about what we should have to set a goal to become a member of the Schengen area, what can be the terms and conditions, because in the Georgian case, I will just repeat that 5 years ago, no one believed that we will receive the visa-free regime. Everyone talks that, oh, no way, it will never happen, and so on. There has been a lot of skeptics. Even me, who was working on this visa liberalization issues, for me, it was very hard to imagine that we will do it. But, here we are, and we have a positive dynamic after 2018. So why not? I think that this will be very important because public servants and civil society also needs to keep satisfaction, and this will be a very good opportunity to raise dynamic, because the best process and the highest dynamic when we are talking about the implementation of the EU reforms. In Georgia, it was when we implemented the visa liberalization action plan. And if we would have such kind of action plan which is connected to Schengen area, I think it would be we would have much more better and efficient result than during the implementation of the association agreement.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have, yes, please, Victoria.
Just a short comment, because the question that you raised is a very important one, and I think that the European Union has to think very well now how they will engage the countries, because when we are talking about sticks and carrots, they don't have any carrots anymore, so we are standing only with the sticks. And I think that here we have to really think about it, because enlargement, it's not possible, and we understand that. Membership perspective, again, we are told all the time, the Eastern Partnership countries, that this is not something that we will receive soon. But at the same time, we have to think, how do we engage the societies? Because when we were talking about visa-free, everybody was expecting that. It was like a light at the end of the tunnel. So we have to think about some other lights at the end of the tunnel if the membership perspective is not there.
Thank you, Victoria, for these very important things, because I agree that probably we should do more with informing our citizens, civil society, about benefits that we delivered from visa liberalization, I mean reforms, because we all know about benefits from movements of people, but not all people knows about reforms, achievements, and I think there is a room for improvements of this informational campaign. Okay, I think we can sum up our session. I think we had a very interesting discussion and exchange of information, and I hope we could the opportunity to raise some actual questions. Of course, probably we didn't have the answer on all of them, but the main issues, the main results of our today discussions is that we have a common interest to go further, to push the reforms, and we have additional instruments for doing that. Thank you, first of all, our prominent speakers for their contribution to this, and thank you all of you for interaction, for contribution, and have a nice day.